Welcome to City Club of Eugene's October 23rd, 2020 program, Oregon House Districts 13 and House District 14 Candidate Forum. This is the seventh program of our 2021 programming year. My name is Scott Coltrane, and I'm the City Club President. Support for City Club is provided by our members and our sponsors. You can become a member of the City Club at our website, cityclubofueugene.org. We have both business and in-kind sponsors, including diamond sponsors. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. Support comes from the University of Oregon. Since 1876, UO has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically. More information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health is proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond. As your hometown healthcare provider partner for more than 80 years, our mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. We would also like to acknowledge the very generous support that we receive from the City of Eugene and from Lane County. Today's program will be moderated by KLCC News Director Rachael McDonald. I would like to thank Joel Corin, Chair of the City Club Program Committee, for coordinating today's forum. House District 13. District 13 covers much of the downtown, North Eugene, River Road, and Santa Clara neighborhoods. It is bounded roughly by I-5 on the east, 11th Avenue on the south, Highway 99 and River Road on the west, and the Willamette River on the north. The candidates for Oregon House District 13 are State Representative Nancy Nathanson, Democrat and Independent parties, and David Smith, Republican Party. Nancy Nathanson was first elected to represent House District 13 in 2006. She chairs the House Committee on Revenue, co-chairs the Joint Committee on Information Management and Technology, and is a member of the Joint Committee on Legislative Audits. Her prior professional experience includes 37 years working for academic libraries at the University of Oregon and Orbis Cascade Alliance, a consortium of university libraries, where she currently serves as the Resource Sharing Program Manager. From 1993 to 2004, she served on the Eugene City Council, including terms as the president. She attended Northwestern University and earned her bachelor's degree in urban geography from the University of Oregon. David Smith was born in Eugene and lives now in the neighborhood where he was raised. He spent 45 years as a real estate appraiser in California and Oregon. For 5 years, he was chief appraiser of Northern California for the TRW Corporation. He credits this experience with giving him insights into how people really live, from the super rich to the very poor, and a special perspective into the challenges that face the American people. He served in active duty in the U.S. Army, including a year in Vietnam. Smith graduated from the University of Oregon with a degree in political science. House District 14. This district includes portions of Eugene, Junction City, and areas north and west of Junction City. It is bounded roughly by 18th Avenue on the south, Green Hill Road and Highway 36 on the west, the Benton County line on the north, and River Road on the east. The candidates running for House District 14 are Rich Cunningham, Republican and Libertarian parties, and Oregon State Representative Julie Fahey, Democrat, Independent, and Working Families parties. Rich Cunningham is a retired insurance broker and three-term member of the Bethel School Board. During his tenure, he served as a member of the bond committee that helped the district replace 2 elementary schools, build a new science wing at Willamette High School, complete revisions in curriculum for the school district, lower class sizes in 2018-19 school year, increase graduation rates, and balance the education budget. Rich is a member of the Lane County Fair Board and previously served on the Eugene Water and Electric Board and the Lane Council of Governments. He earned a degree in public administration from Robert Williams University in Rhode Island, where he also served as an elected official. Julie Fahey has 20 years of experience in the private sector as a business consultant and co-founder of a human resources consulting firm for businesses and nonprofits. Her focus is on helping employers pay their employees fairly and build skilled workforces. In the Oregon House, she currently serves as the chair of the Housing Committee, co-chair of the Conduct Committee, vice chair of the Economic Development Committee, and member of the Business and Labor Committee and the Rules Committee. In her free time, she's an avid hiker and volunteered as a mentor on a backpacking expedition in Eastern Oregon with Big City Mountaineers, which leads wilderness trips for underserved youth. She earned a BS in chemistry from the University of Notre Dame. Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks for joining us for the City Club of Eugene and League of Women Voters Forum. We're with candidates for House District 13, Democrat Nancy Nathanson and Republican David Smith. I'm KLCC News Director Rachael McDonald. We'll be starting with opening statements, and you'll have 2 minutes each for your opening statement. And we'll start with Nancy Nathanson.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Nathanson. District 13 includes the Willamette River and landmarks and local places that you recognize, like the train station, the football stadium, Delta Ponds, Owen Rose Garden, the Reality Kitchen. I've lived in Eugene for 45 years, since 1975. I spent my entire working life in academic libraries, primarily at the U of O, but eventually with a consortium of university and college libraries in Oregon and Washington. And way back, I was a dance teacher too. Some of you listening now are familiar with the work I've done, working across the aisle to pass legislation to help veterans and seniors, to protect residents of manufactured home parks or mobile home parks, to bring accountability and transparency to government contracts, to expand access to health care and student health centers, and lots more that you can read about on my website, nancynathanson.org. I've helped bring funding to local programs and projects like the Relief Nursery, CASA, Kids Sports Civic Park, and the Lane Transit District MX Corridor. It's urgent now to address homelessness. Mental health treatment needs to be part of the solution. Specialty courts, like drug court, are effective, and it's important to deal with the pandemic and the result of the wildfires. The political scene can be tough, and solutions are hard to come by sometimes. Next year will be one of the toughest legislative sessions in a long, long time. Beyond balancing a strapped budget, the state will need to work on improving equity and eliminating discrimination, to dig out of an economic slump and to help individuals, families, and small businesses simply survive and get through this. But I'm ready to tackle the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from David Smith.
Yes, hello. My name is David Smith. I am a candidate for the House Legislature for District 13. I was born and raised in Eugene. I graduated from Sheldon High School in 1965. That was the second year that the high school was open, actually. And from that point, I went into the U.S. Army for 2 years. I was drafted. I served a year in Vietnam, came back, and enrolled in the University of Oregon, where I received a bachelor's degree in political science in 1972. I moved down to San Francisco with some college friends in search of a career. I began working for a bank as a real estate appraiser. And during that time, I was able to see how people really live, the challenges they face based on the money they have. I was fortunate enough to appraise multi-million-dollar properties from the very rich, names you would all recognize. If I wanted to disclose that, I'll keep that between them and myself. And I saw properties for the very, very poor. And the challenge that they face is overwhelming. The things that they have to go through every day just to make ends meet, just to make sure that when they go to the grocery store and come back, their house is still intact and all of their belongings are still there. That sounds crazy, but it's actually true. In San Francisco, especially, certain neighborhoods have bars on the windows, bars on the doors, and it's like living in your own jail. Anyway, I moved back to Eugene in 1998 and started my appraisal business here. After 45 years appraising real estate, I retired in 2016. Some of the things that drove me back into this situation where I'm applying for public service is the fact that the last few years I was an appraiser. I appraised many properties in the greater Eugene area. And one of the main concerns I found was that seniors are afraid, really afraid, that they're going to lose their home in the years that they have left.
I'm sorry, David, your time is up.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll get to touch on that some more. We'll go ahead and start with our first question, and you'll get to answer first. What is your idea of how the state government should be responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, both the health aspect of it and the economic fallout? And you'll have 1 minute each. Yes.
I believe in science and I believe in the science, but there's conflicting people with different opinions, all representing science. I'm not sure that the issue has been cleared. There are some people who say we should all wear a mask, and then there are people who say the masks are no good, and they're all equally as scientific qualified as the other. So I'm not sure what we can do. I'm not sure how we should repair ourselves in the public when we go out and about. If it's a situation where people are afraid because somebody's not wearing a mask, then let's belay those fears. Let's wear masks, okay? But when you're outside, if you want to have a barbecue with some friends over, I'm not sure that masks are absolutely a necessity. I'm hoping that the vaccine comes along soon, that it's a good vaccine and will eradicate this problem from our country and the world, actually. And we can go back to what we hope is normal. I'd like that normal part.
Thank you. Nancy, again for you, how, if at all, how should state government should respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic fallout?
Thank you. Over the course of this months-long pandemic, it's become abundantly clear that Oregon can't count on the federal government for helping solve the problems and providing PPE, personal protective equipment, and testing supplies for us. This is why I have been working with a colleague, a retired Air Force officer, on a proposal to engage business in helping provide, acquire and provide the supplies that we will need. We will need more, very likely, as the fall and winter comes along. We will need more supplies and better and more testing. So I'm working on that angle. As far as an economic recovery, the economists tell us it will take 3 to 5 years to fully get back to where we were. But you know, the economic outcome is inextricably linked with the health outcome. Until people are more comfortable with returning to the workplace, returning shopping and eating, the economy will suffer as well. So we've got to conquer the pandemic to get the economic situation turned around.
Thank you. We'll stay with you, Nancy, for to answer first on this question. What is your plan for state government to deal with homelessness and affordable housing?
Oh, first of all, I think we need to be very creative and flexible with new solutions as well as back to the future old solutions. Some of you know the work I've done to preserve affordable housing in mobile home parks. We need to make sure that we have emergency shelter, temporary shelter, short stay shelter. For homeless persons, I think we need to have not just housing, but it needs to be housing accompanied with services, wraparound services. When someone can't have a secure place to keep their medication and a way to get to treatment, it's not very likely they're going to be able to help themselves pull out of this. So we need to address mental health, physical health, and also the economic health of individuals who are homeless and treat it in a holistic way. I also think that we can use state leveraged money for bonding to build some of the emergency housing that needs to be built.
Thank you. And same question for you. What is your plan for state government to deal with homelessness and affordable housing?
Well, I think there are three categories of homelessness that need to be addressed individually. One, families with sometimes children, single mothers with children, they're displaced out of their apartments or whatever because they couldn't pay rent. Things went bad for them economically and socially. They're out in the street through no fault of their own. And I believe that they need all the help, financing and consideration, including education, so they can be reemployed in a job that we can get. Their kids need to be fully provided for schools. They need to have clothes and things where they can go to school and not be embarrassed by their situation in life. Second of all is the criminal element. The criminal element needs to be addressed. I would like to see the people who are on opioids and smoking crank, crystal meth, whatever that stuff is, forced into rehab. And if they refuse rehab, then they should be put in a detention of some sort. The other are the mentally ill, the people who, through no fault of their own, are hallucinating, they're psychosis and delusional.
I'm so sorry, we just ran out of time for that, but hopefully you can touch on that again. I'm going to move forward to the next question, and we'll start with you, David. Do you believe the state should take measures toward reforming police? And if so, what actions do you support? And please explain.
I'm really upset about what's going on in Portland. I'm really upset about the mayor, and I'm upset about the governor and their lack of action in restoring law and order in the streets. We've seen some of that in Eugene. We've seen some of that in Salem. Those people need to be politically taken to task for that. As far as the police are concerned, I don't want to see anybody out abusing anybody for any reason. Whether you pull them over for a traffic stop of some sort, they need to be treated respectfully, and they need to be treated according to the law. Not everybody in this world is a nice person. And when they pull over somebody that's not a nice person, that's got a gun or a knife, I want to see that police officer or woman go home at night and be with their family. I don't want to see their life threatened because they had to deal with basically a criminal thug. And in many cases today, that's what some of the riots and racism are based on. I don't think we're a systemic racist country. I think that we are.
We'll get to that in just a moment. I'm going to give Nancy the opportunity to answer the question regarding police reform. What should state government do toward reforming the police, if anything, and what would you support?
The legislature recently took action on several proposals to reform police, to stop chokeholds, to enable a searchable database, for example, for records for officers whose certification had been revoked or suspended, and to require police to intervene or prevent another officer from engaging in an act that they knew or should reasonably have known is not legal or would be misconduct, to require them to help each other follow the law, if you will. But what's more important is, I believe, to make sure that we understand the root causes that are leading to the kind of dangerous interactions that people are protesting and the dangerous interactions that police are getting into. You know, a large number of calls that come in for emergency services aren't really about policing. They are about needing emergency help for someone suffering mental or emotional stress. And I have long been promoting a proportional response so that when that sort of a
I'm
call
sorry,
comes
Nancy, you've gone
Okay.
over your time. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
This next question is regarding structural racism. Do you believe it exists in the state? And what action, if any, do you propose to address it? And we'll start with you, Nancy Nathanson.
Yes, I think that for decades and decades, there has been systemic inequity and inequality in housing, in employment, in education, in healthcare, and we need to address that. We've just built on what some people might have called just common practice, but was very unfair and has inequitable consequences on certain people in society that need to be, we need to be lifting up our society so that everyone has a fair shot. For example, that there is equal treatment in the judicial system, in social service systems, in healthcare. We know that there are inequities even in healthcare as well as education. And it's time that we continue addressing that. There have been steps we've taken in the past decade or two, and it's not enough.
Thank you so much. So again, David, for you, the question is, do you believe that structural racism exists in Oregon? And what action, if any, do you propose to address it?
I believe that there are racists in our society. I believe that there are people who are judging people by the color of their skin, by their religion, by their sex, by their orientation. I believe that those things all exist. But are we systemically a racist nation? No, we're not. I remember growing up when we were going through the Civil Rights Acts back in the 60s and the 50s when the National Guard was called out to some of the states in the South. When I was in the Army, I was in South Carolina for a while. There were actually black and white water fountains and black and white bathrooms. That was horrible. I couldn't deal with that. I'm from Oregon. That doesn't exist here. A lot of that's changed. We've progressed. We've moved forward. People are basically considered equal opportunity. If you want to sit at a restaurant, you want to get on the bus, all these other things have been taken care of over time. And progress is slow, but we're still moving forward. I'm seeing white guys dating African-American girls now. I think that's fantastic. That couldn't happen 10, 15 years ago. So we're continually moving forward. We're continually improving the social status of our lives. And the more we do that, more equally everybody's being treated in whatever aspect of our world they are seeking help or getting jobs or whatever. They're getting help and benefiting from that.
All right, thank you. How would, and this is for you, David, to start with, what would you do to help narrow the urban-rural divide in Oregon?
Define urban growth divide.
What I'm talking about is that there is a political, there's often a political difference between people who live in the cities like Eugene and Portland and Ashland, and then folks that maybe live in the more rural communities.
Okay. Unfortunately, for the last several election seasons, Portland and Multnomah County and those areas have had enough power in the Democrat Party to basically determine the election outcome. We've got a third of the people, there's not quite 4 million people in the state of Oregon, And a third of those people live in rural areas like Klamath Falls and Pendleton. They don't get very much representation. That's sad. You know, we're all paying taxes. We're all demanding the same services. We all want to live a good life, and we all want the same opportunities. But for many, all the money and all the decisions are being spent in the urban areas, and their projects are getting funded. Water rights and things like that that needed serious attention in the rural areas are not really getting fixed. It's sad. I would like to see somehow redistricting or something that would make some of that a little more equitable.
Thank you. And Nancy, the same question for you. How would you help to narrow the urban-rural divide in Oregon?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure that the legislative responsibility is quite to narrow it as it is to respect the differences and make sure that people are treated equitably no matter where they're living. There's a great difference in how people live in cities and rural areas. And for the most part, they're where they are because they want to be there, mostly. For legislatures, I think our job should be to respect those differences and support the equitable system of public services throughout the entire state, that a child can have a good education, whether it's Curry County or Washington County, so that someone seeking basic health care, it's available in Wheeler County or Marion County, for example, and that grants for small businesses and community programs are distributed fairly. I recently checked into grants for helping out local cultural arts programs, and on a per capita basis, rural Oregon was the winner. You know, we recruit healthcare professionals for underserved and rural areas, and we've got programs to expand broadband internet in rural areas. Those are the kind of things to make sure that the rural areas can have as much economic opportunity and healthcare and services as anyone else.
All right, thank you. We've got time for just one more question, and it's a bit of a long one, and we'll start with you, Nancy. Republican lawmakers walked out during the last two sessions of the legislature, denying a quorum and preventing the conduct of business in the Senate. In the past, Democrats have also walked out. Would you favor allowing the citizens to vote on a constitutional amendment, reducing the quorum to 50% plus one?
Yes, I would favor the citizens putting something like that on the ballot. You know, Oregon is one of 4 states in the US that has this supermajority requirement. All of the other states are able to conduct their legislative business with a regular majority quorum requirement, and I think that's fair. You know, if we don't have that kind of system, in other words, the system that we have now, what we find is that the will of the majority of the voters can be thwarted by a minority number of voters. And that isn't what I call a democratic process. The 60 representatives and 30 senators were elected from their various areas to represent the ideas, the values, the concerns, and solve problems for those areas. And I don't think there's a better way to address it than to have us represent the voters who sent us there, and the simple majority quorum should be adequate.
All right, thank you. And David, what do you think about changing the rules for a quorum to simple majority?
I think that depending on what's put in front of the floor for a vote, it's very important that there's a minority voice that can walk away. Some of these things that are done in emergency session get passed. It eliminates the people's participation. They don't get to put it on the ballot. They have no voice. We get to a place where things like cap and trade could be passed, but their only benefit is so minor and minuscule that it doesn't have any effect other than diverting money to another part of the economy. I think that we need the quorum to make sure that some of those things stop. I don't think that that represents all the voters in the state of Oregon.
Thank you. And now we are going to wrap it up with our closing statements, and we'll start with you, David Smith, and you have 2 minutes.
I'm running for office for the main reason, as I started in the introduction, I saw people who are afraid to lose their homes. They're in this position where property taxes go up in whatever area they're in, some areas to a higher degree than others. But they get to a place where if they're on Social Security and at retirement, the monthly payment for their property taxes can equal 50% of their Social Security check. That doesn't leave very much for them to retire on, take care of their family and grandkids, pay their bills, their medical expenses, insurance, and everything else that's involved in just life. I would like to see that change. I presented a petition. It's number 38 in the Secretary of State's office. It was approved and okayed by the legal department. I would like to see that worked on. I would like to see something like that passed. Eugene has certain areas where people are hurting more than others. The whole state does. The education system that I'm concerned about is Oregon's ranked 47th out of 50. There's no reason for that. We spend plenty of money, but there's a reason, structural and through unions and whatever. How do you want to pin this down? That we're so low. There's only a couple of states worse off than we are. I want to see that fixed. I want to see the money that's in the education department down to the teachers level. I don't think it's right for teachers to have to take money out of their pockets to buy pencils and pens and paper. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. I think we have superior people here and they deserve a superior education, and they're not getting that. The dropout rate is unacceptable. I want to thank you very much. I hope to have your vote in a couple of weeks. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for putting this this opportunity on.
And Nancy, it's time for your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. In seeking re-election, I'm not planning to coast on what I've accomplished in the past. This year has tested the patience of every Oregonian dealing with a pandemic, an enemy that is still months away from being beaten back, the horrific wildfires that spread across our state, burning about 1 million acres, twice the annual average in the past decade. And it added more stress onto communities to help the people displaced from more than 4,000 residences. And many Oregonians are still without jobs or working fewer hours than what they'd like to work. I want to work on bills that I've already put in motion. Working with a colleague, the retired Air Force officer, the bill to engage Oregon business to help us get PPE and virus testing supplies. A bill about emergency search and rescue. Another bill would implement a child welfare system reform. I believe in public education. I believe in healthy communities, clean air, clean water. I believe in investing in people, using our bonding authority for good public infrastructure projects at the state and local level. That means good family wage jobs now during planning and construction, and then long-term lasting investments in the community. From attending neighborhood meetings, I know, because I listened to the concerns regarding neighborhood quality of life, feeling safe in the neighborhood, slowing down traffic, and having ways to get around without a car if you don't want to get around with a car, living in a good environment. I've been endorsed by 27 organizations representing parents, teachers, consumers, construction workers, advocates for the environment, advocates for equality, the Mother PAC, and Humane Oregon. I've also been selected by the Independent Party of Oregon. You know I will do my best to look at the big picture, the short term, and the long term, and do what's right for the district that I'm elected to represent and for the state. I ask for your vote.
Thank you so much. We've been hearing from candidates for House District 13, Democratic incumbent Nancy Nathanson and Republican challenger David Smith. Thanks to the City Club of Eugene and the League of Women Voters of Lane County. I'm KLCC News Director Rachael McDonald.
Thank you.
You're with us for the City Club of Eugene Candidate Forum with candidates for House District 14 for Oregon. And we've got Julie Fahey and Rich Cunningham. I'm KLCC's Rachael McDonald. We'll start with opening statements and you'll each get 2 minutes, and we'll start with you, Julie Fahey.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, I'm Julie Fahey, and I'm running for re-election as the state representative for House District 14, which includes West Eugene, Bethel, and Junction City. And first, I just want to thank City Club for hosting, and to everyone listening today. It is so important that we have people civically engaged at all levels of government, particularly the state and local. Many of the decisions we make at the state and local level have a bigger impact on our lives than the ones that are made out of DC. So I'm really grateful today for the opportunity to have an in-depth discussion about the issues. In particular, one of the things that I missed this year is knocking on doors and hearing directly from voters what their concerns are. Unfiltered by the media or by polling, just one-on-one conversations about the issues that matter. That's especially important now because of how much is happening in 2020. The pandemic and the resulting economic crisis and the protest for racial justice. I've been proud to serve as the state representative for House District 14 for the past 4 years. In that time, the legislature has delivered on many of the policies that voters asked for. We made a historic new $1 billion investment in K-12 schools and early childhood education through the Student Success Act. I was proud to serve on that committee, and in particular for the success I had in advocating for early childhood education funding. We passed the most robust paid family medical leave policy in the nation. We expanded access to reproductive health care and safeguarded our reproductive rights. We protected Oregonians' access to health care in the face of federal attacks, and we took bold action to address our state's housing crisis. I am incredibly proud of all of those accomplishments, but we are truly in a different world in the year 2020. With the federal mismanagement of the pandemic and the economic crisis, it is more important than ever that our states step up and lead. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm looking forward to hearing the questions.
Thank you. And now, Rich Cunningham, it's your turn. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning and thank you, or good afternoon, and thank you for sponsoring this event. Representative Fahey, it's nice to be with you today. I am a 3-term member of the Bethel School Board, and I served previous to that as a 1-term member of the Eugene Water and Electric Board. And I think Julie's absolutely right when she says it's important for people on the local government to get involved. And unfortunately, there's no path to do that at the moment because we keep re-electing the same leaders with the same ideas and the same non-working excuses. And this current legislature, if you count taxes as being a business tax, a business fee, a personal income tax filer fee, and just a public fee, you'll find that the Democrats raised taxes on the people of Oregon 27 times. They voted to do that in the last session of the legislature. I think that that's a tremendous record for them to run on, and it's certainly not a very good one. I've introduced a platform that explains what I'll do if I'm elected and what I will try and do if I'm elected. And I will agree with everybody that this is an interesting year to be campaigning. No one has had much fun doing it this year. There's, I have a 15-year-old, and one of his favorite lines is, "You told me when I got to high school, getting an education would be fun." And I did. I told him that, and he says, now I'm getting all the learning stuff, but I can't have any of the fun because everything else is closed down but the learning. And I think that that's basically the same thing that's going on or has gone on in the state of Oregon. And we need to reopen our state as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible. And to a large degree, I side with all of Governor Brown's closures. I think that she's done an admirable job when no one else wanted to, which no one else would really want to do. And I think she had the courage to close.
We'll get to talk about that more as we go to our next question.
That's fine. I'm ready.
So we'll go into questions, and we'll be going back and forth in order, and we'll actually start with you, Rich. And in fact, this first question, you'll have 1 minute to answer. what is your idea of how, if at all, the state government should be responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic fallout from the pandemic?
Well, as you can see, if you saw the latest economic indicators that came out in September, the state currently has a $1.7 billion surplus. And as happened, they shut the government down effectively the middle of March, which means all the revenues that poured in March were there, because with the exception of 2 weeks, so all the taxes they anticipated collecting and right down the line, they were all collected. So there was no financial crisis until that date in the state of Oregon. The money was accumulated as it would have been through the middle of March, through the end of March actually, but things shut down the middle of March. So for 2 weeks, we were off a little, but even the economic people in the state say we were not off that much. And they're saying we now currently have a $1.7 billion deficit. So I think that the cost of the budget was overestimated at the time, and through no fault of their own by the members of the other party. And but I think it's now time to kick some of that back to the people, as we now have a surplus of $1.7 billion.
Julie Fahey, same question for you. What is your idea of how the state government should respond to the pandemic and the economic fallout from it?
Thank you, Rachel. I do see that as two distinct topics. One, the public health aspect, and then the economic piece. So from a public health perspective, we need to make sure that at every phase of the pandemic, the state and the counties have enough PPE for our essential workers. They have enough testing and contact tracing capacity to identify and contain any outbreaks. And we need workplace safety rules to prevent and contain workplace outbreaks that have been a decent source of the spread of cases. On the economic side, as we move into economic recovery, I think the legislature must focus on providing additional support for the small businesses that are the backbone of our economy. We also must make sure that there are enough childcare providers to meet the need, because working parents are critical to our recovery. And finally, housing stability for me has been a thing I've spent a lot of time on in the last few months, making sure that everyone can stay housed during the pandemic. And it's something that I've been spending a lot of time on, making sure we can provide financial assistance for renters and for homeowners.
Well, this transitions well to my next question, and this you'll be the one to start with this, Julie. What is your plan for the state government to deal with homelessness and affordable housing in Oregon?
That is an issue that I care very deeply about. Just a few months ago was named to be chair of the legislature's housing committee. So making sure that every Oregonian has a safe and affordable place to call home is my top priority. In Oregon, about half of rental households are cost burdened. That means they spend more than 30% of their income on rent. And this isn't just a Portland or Eugene issue. It's definitely a problem all over the state, in urban and in rural areas. So to me, it's really clear that the status quo on housing isn't working. And I believe the root cause of that is a lack of supply of housing. We have analysis that shows we're about 155,000 housing units short across the state just to meet our current need. And that's mostly for lower and middle income Oregonians. So I think solving that problem is going to take many years and no one single solution, but we must focus on addressing the shortage of housing in our state, on enabling more Oregonians to become homeowners, on providing protections for tenants, and on creating the services and the infrastructure that we need to enable a comprehensive response to homelessness.
Right. And Rich, same question for you. Your plan for state government to deal with homelessness and affordable housing.
Unlike most sectors of government, the Bethel School Department has actively dealt with the homeless population. Being on the school board, I had a vote in that and supported each and every measure we put forward to help our homeless population. Well, one of the most scariest things is you see a school district of 5,500 students, almost between 55 and 6,000, depending upon the year. And these kids, at some time in their lives, are a lot of them, at least 10% at any given time, are in some form of homelessness. It may be laying on someone's couch at night, and maybe with a grandparent. but their family is in some form of homelessness. So out in Bethel, we have a new worked with Homes for Good, and we have new buildings coming up that are new apartment buildings off of right in back of Malabon Elementary School. I like to say in back of the visitors' stands at the football stadium. And this is going to house, I believe it's 146 families. And then another board I serve on, I've been active of getting in.
I'm sorry, Rich.
Okay, I'll just get that on my clothes, no problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have to keep going.
Yep.
What do you think the state government should do regarding reforming police, if anything, and explain your thoughts on this?
I am the brother of a police officer in Manchester, New Hampshire. He's a sergeant on the police department. My dad was a police officer at one time in his life, and many members of my family had been police officers one time in life. I firmly stand behind the police officers. I oppose 100% any defunding of police. I'm concerned that I read an article that was published in the Northwest Observer stating that Representative Fahey has written to demand the federal agents out of Portland. Well, if you're going to move the federal armed law enforcement officers out of Portland, I think you need to do something in their place, maybe move in the National Guard. This whole thing has to come to an end, and we have to get on with the living, make up what we did wrong in the past. And there's no doubt that no public service agency is perfect, and the police are that way as well. But they've done a good job. They're the ones that are willing to put their lives on the line every day of the week, and I support them 100%.
Thank you. And Julie, same question for you. Do you believe that state government should take measures toward reforming the police? And please explain your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Rachel. I believe that every single person in this country should be treated equally and fairly under the law and should have equal access to justice. And I just don't think that that is the case right now, as evidenced by the murders of George Floyd and so many other Black Americans, the disproportionate impact that the war on drugs had on people of color, and other experiences that people of color have shared with us over the past decades. I was proud this summer to support a series of 7 bipartisan bills that the legislature passed to increase the transparency and accountability of our law enforcement agencies. And I do actually believe that there's more to be done. The Cahoots model here in Eugene has gotten a lot of national attention lately, and rightfully so. And I would like to see the legislature invest in community safety models like that in other communities across the state that offer mental health and crisis intervention as an alternative to response.
Okay, thank you. So this question will be for you, Julie, to start with. Do you believe that structural racism exists in the state? And what action, if any, do you propose to address it?
Yes, I absolutely believe that structural racism exists in this state and in this country. It's one of the things, as chair of the housing committee and someone who focuses on housing issues, it is truly impossible to work in housing policy and not just look straight in the face the history of discrimination in our housing policies, from redlining to racially restrictive covenants and deeds that prohibited people of color from living in certain homes, to exclusionary single-family zoning to this day. And those historical practices that were in our systems are still having an impact today on home ownership races amongst people of color. There's a massive difference in home ownership rates by race in this country. So housing is definitely one of those areas where we need to focus on making investments to increase home ownership levels amongst people of color in this state. And so it's not just about police accountability, it's also about economic justice around housing, around providing more support for small businesses, for entrepreneurs of color, and in addressing disparities in educational outcomes by race.
Thank you. And now, Rich, again, the question is, do you believe that structural racism exists in the state, and what action, if any, do you propose to address it?
I've lived in several states over my lifetime, and I think that Oregon is one of the most fair-minded, structurally safe communities in all of the United States. I see very little racism, but maybe that was because I was brought up to just, I had friends of all colors. We like to say there was never a question in that where I grew up. And, you see some of this now. I think that we all just need to come together more. But I don't think giving Cahoots and other agencies like Cahoots a pair of handcuffs without the gun to back them up, because there's some really bad people in Portland, and there's really bad people in the big cities in this state that need to be put away, and put away once and for all.
Okay.
And you need a gun to do that a lot of times.
All right, thank you. Now we'll stick with you, Rich, and the question is, what would you do to help narrow the urban-rural divide in Oregon?
I think that I live right on what I like to call the urban divide. I live close to Meadowview Elementary School, and often down by the Prairie Mountain area, where they're just one city block away from becoming the next victim. Their farmland is one city block away from becoming the next victim of urban sprawl. And I think we got to be very careful. We've got to protect the farmlands, first of all, because we need to we need to have an obligation to those farmers, and we need to feed our people. And we do good things in Bethel doing that. And, I'd be happy to speak to those later, but I hope that answers the question.
And Julie, for you, what would you do to help narrow the urban-rural divide in Oregon?
I think it's true that there are different regions in Oregon that have different needs in terms of state level policies and funding, which is driven in part by the differences in each area's economy. So I grew up in a small town, and of course now I live in Eugene, and I've seen firsthand the differences in economic opportunity and mobility that can exist in different areas. But I also think that there are many challenges that every part of our state faces. You mentioned housing affordability for one, but also infrastructure, and our educational system. So, I also think that there are many opportunities for cooperation. So one of the things that I have done to try and narrow the urban-rural divide is I hope to create a bipartisan caucus with younger legislators who are committed to addressing the most pressing issues facing the next generation of Oregonians: housing costs, debt, that sort of thing. We've come together to work on solutions across the aisle and across the urban-rural divide to try and work on these issues. So definitely something that's important, and we as elected officials have a role in bridging that gap.
Julie, just to let you know, your speaker is cutting out a little bit.
Okay, I will do what I can to fix that.
Okay. And this is, I believe we have time for possibly one or two more questions. This one's a bit of a long one. Republican lawmakers walked out during the last two sessions of the legislature, denying a quorum and preventing the conduct of business in the Senate. In the past, Democrats have also walked out. Would you favor allowing the citizens to vote on a constitutional amendment, reducing the quorum to 50% plus one? And Julie, we'll start with you.
Okay, let me know if my mic is still.
You're sounding better.
I think most people that I talk to just want our government to function. They are tired of Congress getting nothing done. They are tired of the partisanship. And I think they expect their elected representatives to do the work of legislating, even when they're not in the majority. Last year, Lane Shutterly, who's a Republican and a former Speaker pro tem of the Oregon House, published an op-ed in the Oregonian and said that if the walkouts become a normalized strategy, it's going to be a recipe for gridlock and anarchy. And I just don't think that many voters want gridlock and anarchy in their state government. So I absolutely would support, having voters vote on whether to reduce the quorum requirements from a 2/3 majority to a simple majority. When you look at how other states do it, we are one of only 4 states in the country that has that 2/3 majority. In the other states, for conducting any business, in other states, And in Congress, it's a simple majority. So that's part of the reason why you just don't hear that much about walkouts in other states, because it's a pretty rare occurrence, because our system is unique.
Well, thank you. And same question for you, and I'll just restate it quickly. Republican lawmakers walked out during the last 2 sessions of the legislature, denying a quorum and preventing the conduct of business in the Senate. And in the past, Democrats have also walked out. Would you favor allowing the citizens to vote on a constitutional amendment, reducing the quorum to 50% plus 1?
Yes, because I think both sides have learned from the way the quorums go now that everyone's going to be able to take advantage of that sometime or another during their reign. I have a history of working together with the people of the Bethel area, with the people of downtown Eugene, and on the Lane County Fair Board in the entire county. So that, it to me, is a no-brainer. I don't believe that it's something I could ever do, would be to walk out of the chamber. I personally have a problem with it because I think you take an oath of office to serve the people, and that would be the way that I would handle it. So with that said, I think we need more people like myself, and even my opponent on some issues that would be willing to work with the other side to get things done.
Thank you. Now we've made it to our closing statements. So we'll start with you, Rich, and you'll have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
I probably won't use my 2 minutes, I hope, but it's been an honor to serve the community, and this is the final step in the ladder that, I guess the ladder is probably a bad word, but I'll use that, to get to, I would like to get to the legislature. I think I could do things to help people. I think I could bring people together. I think I could make our system work, and that's why I chose to run again this time. We have people that want to govern by cartoons in my party, and we have people that want to do the same thing in Julie's party. We have the ultra sides. We need to create a common side that everybody can come in and work with. And should I not be elected, I will continue to work with Representative Fahey and Senator Manning on legislation that I hope would be good for our school district. And but I'd like that opportunity to do that, and I hope the voters will give me a chance. I think I can do a good job, and I think that change isn't a bad thing.
Thank you. Julie?
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Rich. We had a good conversation today, and I know we've covered a lot of ground. I believe that my work in the legislature has shown that I am a champion for working families struggling to get ahead, that I will fight for affordable housing, access to healthcare, and a quality education system. Our education system is incredibly important to me because I know that strong schools and good teachers have the power to change lives. So I'm proud to be endorsed by education advocacy groups like the Oregon Education Association and Stand for Children. I also believe that politicians should have no place in a woman's personal healthcare decisions. I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood Back Up Oregon, and in 2017, I championed the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which is helping to ensure that the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion, is accessible and affordable for all Oregonians. I believe we need tougher environmental safeguards to preserve Oregon's clean air and water and to protect its natural beauty. And my campaign has been endorsed by both the Sierra Club and the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. But at the end of the day, I know it's not just about the things that I want to get done. It's about listening to the needs of the people in my district. And to me, that's one of the most important jobs that an elected official has, to actually listen to the people they represent and to make sure they have a voice in government. I've been proud to be that voice for the last 4 years in House District 14, and I hope to earn your vote again this November. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've been with candidates for House District 14 in the state legislature. Julie Fahey, the Democrat, who's the incumbent, and Rich Cunningham running as a Republican. Thank you so much for joining us with the City Club of Eugene and the League of Women Voters of Lane County. I'm KLCC's Rachael McDonald.
This has been our October 23rd, 2020 program, the Oregon House Districts 13 and 14 Candidates Forum. Before we proceed, I'd like to recognize some gold sponsors: Sacred Earth Botanicals, Emergency Veterinary Hospital, and Homes for Good. and our Sapphire sponsor, Summit Bank. Support for the City Club comes from Summit Bank, your local community bank. An independent community bank headquartered in Eugene, Summit Bank serves businesses and professionals in Eugene, Springfield, and Central Oregon communities. For more information, visit sbko.bank. It is our expectation to have these taped conversations available by Fridays at noon. We want to thank all of you for supporting us during these difficult times. Before we thank our speakers today, there are a few quick announcements. Thank you to our in-kind sponsors, KRVM 91.9 Radio, Pack Info and Simplified Computing LLC, Dotson's Photography, and Network Charter School. And a special thank you to public radio station KLCC 89.7 for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. And thank you to Community Television of Lane County, Cable Channel 29, for televising recent City Club programs. Next week, we welcome candidates running for Oregon Secretary of State. The candidates include Shamia Fagan, Democrat, Natalie Paravinci, Progressive and Pacific Green parties, and Kim Thatcher, Republican. You may send questions to the City Club's Executive Director through Monday, October 26th, and the program's moderator will select those questions that will be asked. Please send your questions to administrator@cityclubofeugene.org. Please join us again on October 30th. More details and information about future programs can be found online at the City Club's website, cityclubofeugene.org. Now, I would like to thank today's speakers for a great program. State Representative Nancy Nathanson, David Smith, Rich Cunningham, and State Representative Julie Fahey. And thank you to Rachael McDonald for moderating today's session. This concludes today's program. Be well and stay safe.